Hi, hello, welcome to the second audio version of my long-running monthly short fiction roundup, which also just happens to be the final roundup for 2019. But instead of waxing poetic about how awesome a year it's been for speculative short fiction, and it's been an awesome year again, let's just get right into it because I have 16 awesome stories to share with you this month. First out is 28 male, created a deepfake girlfriend and now my parents think we're getting married. That's the title. It's by Fonda Lee in MIT Technology Review. The story is written by the marvelous Fonda Lee, author of Jade City and Jade War, also the author of EXO and Crossfire, and it is an absolute gosh darn delight. It's near future sci-fi that feels near enough that it might almost be here already. It's sharp, it's smart, and it has a sly sense of humor. It's written in the style of a Reddit post and even includes the poster's reactions to various comments and suggestions from readers as the story progresses. And Fonda Lee commented on Twitter that I will not tell you how much time I spent on Reddit to research this piece. The premise of the story is right there in the title. It's about the shenanigans and complications that follow one man's decision to create a fake girlfriend and how that decision ultimately, no surprise, backfires. A must read. Second story this month is The Kingdom of the Butterflies by Isabel Cañas in Luna Station Quarterly. Two sisters, Elvira and Rosa, live their lives in a valley that is one of those God's touched places that was neither here nor there. Every day they turn mortal souls into aguamiel, the ambrosia of the gods. Whispering the spells taught to them by the goddess Mayahuel, they spin the souls into golden thread before weaving those magical threads into the golden cloth of aguamiel. Then Mayahuel takes the golden cloth to the gods, who turn it into liquid and drink it. The lives of the girls are strictly controlled, hemmed in by the rules laid down by the goddess, and the girls are also kept in check by their fear of the goddess's rage and her very severe and violent punishments. But Rosa still remembers a time before they came there, and she is determined to win their freedom. This is a beautiful and evocative story that blends mythology and fairy tale with the lives and lore of butterflies. Next up is Go On Lick Me by Luna Corbden in Zooscape. Zooscape is a speculative fiction scene of fantastic furry fiction, where the animals can talk, magic flows, and the stars are in reach, as they say on their website. And this scene has been a wonderful addition to my reading diet in 2019. This particular story about a very intelligent toad is wickedly funny and hides a sharp twist beneath its toady exterior. Next up is the story Fossilized by Jessica Yang in Anathema. Anathema's brand new issue is packed with great fiction, including this story about what happens when Huayin's Ama dies, and when Huayin eventually hikes up the Tianran mountain where a god is said to dwell. Fossilized is a poignant, quietly powerful story about grief and family and language, and about the sometimes complicated bond between older generations and younger generations. This story also ought to come with a warning. This story will make you hungry, because the way food is described here, especially pork buns, is delectable. Next up is The Thing About Heisenball by Stuart C. Baker in Flash Fiction Online. Heisenball is not your usual kind of game. As Polly, who is in a somewhat troubled relationship with the story's narrator, explains, the thing about Heisenball is that you can't win, but you can't lose either. Not really. It's not about the game. And once they start playing, we, the readers, soon realize just how different and how transformative the game can be. A lovely, piercing story about the vagaries of love and affection and how we don't always see ourselves and others as clearly as we think we do. My next story is Methods of Ascension by Dan Stintsey in Nightmare. And lately it seems that I'm reading all the scary stories in my to-read pile in the middle of the night. And that includes this deeply creepy and unnerving tale by Stintsey. It's a story that starts out dark and then moves deeper and deeper into the shadows of a life, of a family, and into what lurks beneath those shadows, until we're in a place so dark that reality itself seems to bend and collapse in on itself. There's an isolated cabin. There is a brother who has been distant for many years. There are dreams and nightmares that bleed into reality. And there is family history that is ever present but not spoken of. Together, it makes for a fantastic, haunting horror story that lingered in my mind long after I finished reading. My next story is also from Nightmare. It's Dead Worms Dangling by Joanna Peripinski. There's dread lurking underneath the surface of every word and paragraph in this darkly brilliant story by Peripinski. Two boys are fishing. They are friends, but they are also very different. There's Milo with his overprotective mother waiting at home, and Buck with a father who leaves marks on his body and maybe his soul as well. Then Milo catches something on his baited hook, and maybe, just maybe, it might be the infamous backwater beast. Heavy with menace and fear and ominous shadows, this masterful horror story is worth both a read and a reread. My next story is The Time Invariance of Snow by E. Lily Yu at Tor.com. Yu gives us a retelling of Hans Christian Andersen's The Snow Queen that is like no other retelling I have read or imagined before. Here, physics and fairy tales and mythology and our own reality merge and splinter, shatter and branch off in new and unexpected directions. Yu masterfully shapes a story that cuts deep, telling us truths about love and power and the world as it is and as it might be. It's the kind of story that is very hard to describe because it is so uniquely its own thing. Rarely have I read a story that blends strands of science fiction and fantasy in such an exquisite way. This is definitely one of the best short stories I read this year. Next up is Deep Water by Daniel Delgado in Lamplight 8.1. In Delgado's story, set in LA, we meet a man who calls himself Enrique. Enrique is a listener. This means that he hears vibrations of emotion. He hears them everywhere, all the time, and the stronger and more heightened the emotion, the louder and more unbearable is the noise he hears. When people disappear, he can find them by getting clues from the noise and the visions hidden in that noise. But when Enrique sets out to find a young boy named David, the residue of despair and grief and pain he encounters is almost overpowering. Delgado expertly ratchets up the tension in the story as Enrique follows the leads all the way to a fateful encounter at the water's edge. My next story is Wonderland by Aisha U. Farah in Foreshadow. This is a fantastical, harrowing, and unique take on the story of Alice in Wonderland, and I loved every raw and fierce bit of it. Farah tells the story of Alexei, who grows up knowing he is different than most of the people around him. Alexei longs for something else, someplace else, or at least another way of living, another kind of life than what others are trying to make him conform to. Rabbit appears when Alexei is a child, and her appearance signals the start of something new in his life. But big changes don't happen easily or quickly, not in life and not in this story. There's a lot of pain and doubt and struggle involved, but in the end, Wonderland, Rabbit, and Alexei's own determination bring about both necessary change and a hard-won hope. Next up, Such Thoughts Are Unproductive by Rebecca Campbell in Clarkesworld. I am an unabashed fan of Campbell's work. Her story, Laris Familiaris, 1981 in Liminal Stories, is one of my all-time favorite short stories. And this story is another subtle, well-crafted piece of fiction from her. In a dystopic future marked by climate change, government oppression, and the constant intrusion in and surveillance of people's private lives, a woman tries to navigate her everyday existence without attracting the attention of the authorities. Her mother has already been imprisoned, her father is under threat of imprisonment, and so is she. There are shades of Orwell's 1984 in this story, with a government that tries to insert new memories and delete inconvenient truths from the news and the history books, and even from people's lives. As so often in Campbell's fiction, the speculative element of the story is firmly anchored in the Canadian landscape, in the towns and roads of small-town British Columbia. And as always, Campbell writes with striking clarity, depth, and insight. My next story is also by a Canadian writer. It's Catabasis by Catherine George in Augur Magazine 2.3. This story is about Dave and Hannah, who have moved around a lot, all the time heading west through Canada, never able to settle down for long anywhere, always driven onwards by loss, grief, problems, and a longing for somewhere to start anew. Now they've come as far west as they can go, living on an island off the coast of British Columbia. In the sea and fog there, Hannah is finding a sense of home and belonging, but she also seems to be drifting farther away from Dave. One day they find a foot on the beach, inside a leather boot with silver buckles. This find comes to haunt both of them, both Hannah and Dave, but in very different ways. I love this gorgeous and melancholy story for how well it captures the gray, rainy day, foggy magic of coastal BC, and for the delicate yet incisive way it also captures the shades of gray in a relationship. My next story is No Mercy to the Rest by Bennett North in Podcastle. When Sadie is brought to Castle Inferno to bring someone back from the dead, it's the beginning of a strange, fabulous, and suspenseful story full of unexpected twists and turns. North's tale is a darkly humorous and hugely entertaining read, or listen, that blends some common genre literature ingredients in a wholly new way. There's a fierce supervillain rivalry, there's the difficult art of necromancy, there's the menace of giant robots, and the unexpected loyalty of an abomination. Next up is Notes from the Laocoon Program by Phoenix Alexander in Metaphorosis magazine. In the story, a space capsule with 2 astronauts inside crash lands on an alien planet. Huxley, our narrator, breaks his back and is badly burned in the crash. Outside the porthole, a strange world awaits for him and his fellow astronaut, Mikhail. It's a world that is nothing like the place they thought they were going to. In the harrowing aftermath of the crash, Huxley is stuck in the capsule, haunted by his past, drifting in and out of consciousness, while Mikhail heads out to explore. They soon realize that the planet is quite unlike anything humans have ever encountered before. This story is unnerving on several levels. There's the strangeness of the planet, and there is the harsh, hostile mind of Huxley, a man who is bitter and full of anger after a lifetime spent denying his own feelings while trying to control what he sees as the undesirable parts of himself. An unsettling and memorable read. The next story is Claudette Dulac and the Devil of the North by Genevieve Sinha in Beneath Ceaseless Skies. In this weird Western / steampunk story, we meet a headstrong and determined teenage girl named Claudette Dulac. Claudette might be only a teenager, but when her father disappears in the snowy wilderness while trying to slay a mysterious beast stalking the woods, she heads out to look for him, hoping to slay the monster herself. Sinha's story is a rollicking, riveting ride through the snow and ice and cold, full of fantastical weapons and unexpected discoveries and unexpected friendship. It's a wonderful read that hooked me from the first word to the very last, and that also made me want to follow Claudette Dulac on new adventures. Fabulous prose and storytelling. The final story for my roundup this month is Save, Salve, Shelter by Essa Hansen in the magazine of fantasy and science fiction, and it's from the January-February 2020 issue. Hansen's story is set in a future where Earth has been ravaged by environmental change and disease to the point that most of the humans and most of the animals have died or are dying. What's left of humanity is leaving the planet in a fleet of Exodus shuttles, looking to make a home elsewhere in the solar system. However, they are bringing samples of the flora and fauna with them, hoping to eventually recreate them. Pasha is one of the people tasked with gathering genetic samples, but while she is fulfilling that mission, she is also gathering the surviving animals she finds. Birds, snakes, predators, and prey. She carries them all with her, hoping to save them and bring them aboard one of the Exodus shuttles. But again and again, they are turned away. And while Pasha is wandering with all these animals, both she and the animals are changing, transforming in unexpected ways. This is a deeply unsettling vision of the future, and also a deeply moving, ferocious, and visceral story. And that was all my stories for this month's roundup. Thank you so much for listening. And if you want to read the roundup, it's at curiousfictions.com. And you can search for my name there, Maria Haskins, and you'll find it as a post there. Thank you so much. Happy New Year, and all the best to you in 2020.